G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another VFL report for Blue Abroad. It's good to be back as well after the lockdown has ended. I'm Paul Sebastiani here to do it all again, and it's nice to have VFL action back, albeit without the crowds. But I did have the good fortune of being able to go down to Northport Oval last weekend to call Port Melbourne v Carlton reserves for the Carlton Football Club live stream. So that was good fun. So I got to see the boys go around again this weekend, and it was a good result for them, albeit against arguably inferior opposition, I would say, with all due respect to Port Melbourne. Carlton were able to get the job done 12-11-83 to Port Melbourne 10-8-68. And if you haven't been here before, or even if you have been here, the way I like to go through this is just talk about how the team went from a team perspective, and then go through each Carlton listed player individually, and then make any notable references to any of the VFL listed boys who had good games, which there were a handful of. But we'll start with the man that everybody probably wants to hear about, the man who's close to 300 games, and that's Mark Murphy. He had 27 touches, he had 7 marks and 3 tackles in a good return, coming back down to VFL level. I think this is the first time he's ever played down at VFL level in his career thus far. But he acquitted himself well. Look, it wasn't an absolute standout game from Murph by any means, but I think it's enough to potentially get him back into the senior side if the club so goes that way. Which it's looking like it may, given the result against GWS over the weekend. But he played predominantly in the midfield, pushed across across half forward as well, and his ball use going inside forward 50 was, it's always going to be good from Mark Murphy, especially down at VFL level where he's afforded plenty of time and space given his running capability. Sam Petrevski-Seaton is another one that people will be interested in. He had 25 touches. He had 8 tackles, importantly, which shows a hunger and desire for the contest, something that the AFL boys against the Giants did not show. The tackle pressure was nowhere near good enough. So I think that particular stat may be something that the coaches look at. Well, it's clearly going to be something the coaches have to look at. If they don't, well, it's clearly negligent on their behalf, I would say. And I think that, as I said, that particular stat, I think, is going to hold Sam Petrevski-Seaton in good stead, given what happened with the Carlton boys from an AFL perspective over the weekend. So I wouldn't be surprised if they pick him just on that alone. But he did win his own football as well, and his leadership going back down to VFL level over the weekend was quite good as well. So he was pointing and barking out instructions too, which is good to see from a senior player. But I mean, the only knock on him now is that he's fit. He's a top draft pick, and he can't get a game in an AFL side that is really struggling at the moment. So whether or not the writing is on the wall about these WA clubs circling around him, and whether or not that interest is really going to sway him to move over back home to WA, we'll wait and see. But the game from SPS was good enough to warrant being picked against Adelaide come this weekend. Levi Casbolt as well acquitted himself very well, but that is again to be expected of a man who's played over 100 games of AFL football. He had 22 disposals, but he had 11 marks to go with that as well. He had 22 hit-outs too. He was thrown in the ruck for the majority of the game, given what happened to our other ruckman, which I will allude to later in this report. But yeah, the 11 marks, he was thrown up forward, kicked an important goal late in the fourth quarter when the game was on the line too. A good game from Levi Casbolt. He went back as well, so he was sort of thrown everywhere as a ruck, as a forward, as a back, and did his job well. Took some key intercept marks late in the game and throughout the game, deep in defence too. So, this is a game that he should be having down in the reserves. Not sure if he'll pop back up into the senior side, but if someone goes down with injury, I'm sure a game like that would be something that he could hang his hat with and put his hand up and say, yes, pick me. But moving on from him, probably the most impressive player on the day, and I wanted to keep this one under wraps, but Jack Carroll, wowee, 26 disposals. He had 8 marks to go with that as well. 20 kicks and 6 handballs, 3 tackles, but it was his clearance work that really, really stood out like a sore thumb here. And pardon the pun, because he actually did break his thumb before coming back into the VFL team. His first 2 games back before we went into this sort of lockdown break were very, very quiet, but he has come back onto the scene in a big way here. And as I said, his clearance work was quite phenomenal over the weekend. I was very impressed with the way he was able to find time and space away from the stoppage and away from congestion too, which is something that I think our midfielders really struggle with at AFL level. So it'd be nice for our AFL boys to be graced with someone who has a graceful step away from the stoppage. And he's able to find a little bit of time and space away from the congestion, and he's able to feed the ball out and use the ball well by himself too. He's got a lovely raking left foot kick, beautiful with ball in hand, and I love his ability to really see the open space and lower the eyes and try to hit a target rather than just bombing away. So it's a really good game that he can build himself on for the rest of the season. I don't think he's going to be picked this weekend. I doubt he would be. It'll probably require another 2 to 3 weeks of form like he showed over the weekend. But overall, a very impressive game from young Jack Carroll, and I'm very impressed with what he showed over the weekend. Lockie O'Brien, probably one of his more quieter games, only had the 16 touches. Again, he used the width of the ground as much as he could. But yeah, I mean, it's not a game that I think he will be pushing his. It's not a game that he will be coming back into the AFL side with, I wouldn't have thought. Jordan Boyd was good. He had the 16 touches. He shows a real hunger and appetite for the contest. He gave away a few silly free kicks early, but I think that was probably just the rush of blood going to his head, given that he'd just been picked up by us in the mid-season rookie draft. So it's a game that he can build on too. And I just want to apologise to him as well. I accidentally called him Jesse a handful of times in the last quarter, but I'll put my hand up and own up to that one. So Jordan Boyd, he can continue on his merry way with a game like that. As for the rest of the Carlton listed boys, Matthew Cottrell hit the scoreboard, kicked 2 goals, had 15 touches. He's just got to lift his output from a disposal perspective. He's got a big tank that he needs to utilise. And that needs to start to translate into ball-winning ability too. 15 touches is not enough at VFL level for a man of his tank. But maybe it's just a case of him maybe not being able to understand how to really win the ball and where to run and where to receive the ball and where to best position yourself to receive the ball out in space. I don't think it's going to be a game where he comes back into the senior side. But he'll be handy down at VFL level regardless. Tom Williamson was another fella who really caught my eye over the weekend too. His will and hunger at the contest against a fella called Matthew Signorello, who was one of the main forwards for Port Melbourne. It was a fantastic battle, and I hope the club actually do put some vision up of this game or the full game. And it was a cracking one-on-one battle between Williamson and Signorello, and I think Williamson did win the day. It looked a little bit ominous early when Signorello hit the scoreboard, but Williamson really flew the flag for the Blues defenders down there, and it's a game I think he can be proud of. He only had the 15 touches, but I wouldn't worry about disposals with the type of game that he played. He was fantastic on his opponent. Again, whether or not that translates into AFL form, that hasn't been shown this year, but he's progressing nicely down at VFL level, and he's still very young too. So that might be he might be a player that we could continue to bank on to develop down at VFL level. So he seems to be going along okay now. As I said, it's just a case of translating that into AFL form. Josh Honey, fantastic game from him. 3 goals. He's starting to really hit the scoreboard too. He kicked a fantastic goal from about 45 metres out on the run towards the left-hand side of the broadcast screen. But by golly, this guy has he has a dynamic turn of foot when he gets out the back as well, and he's got a lovely kick for goal too. And look, I'm looking forward to seeing this young fella come into into the senior side in the not too distant future. So keep an eye out for Josh Honey. I'm very excited by what I see from him. A very very dynamic footballer too. So keep an eye out for him. He's an impact footballer. He won't have much of the ball as we've seen here. He only had the 10 touches, but impact. He has a big impact on the games, and the 3 goals clearly showed that. Brodie Kemp, quiet from a disposal point of view, only had the 9 touches, but defended reasonably well. He worked into the game late and had some good one-on-one moments too, but he'll just continue to build. He's obviously coming back from an ACL and a serious ankle injury too. So if we look back to his first game back against Box Hill when he was having to deal with a tsunami of Box Hill inside 50s. He dealt with them as best as he could, and he's got the build, he's got the body to be able to make it at AFL level as well. And, we gave up a fair chunk of our draft to get him in. We took the risk, even though we knew that he had the ACL injury. So he's a very, very talented footballer, but he'll just continue to build up. Corey Durden was quiet, only had the 4 disposals, but he did have 4 tackles, and he continues to hunt, and it's eventually going to turn around for him. If he continues to show the will at the contest that he does, then that output will continue to increase. But he just needs to start hitting the scoreboard a little bit more and just harnessing in that energy too. And unfortunately, the bad news out of this game is that the ruck that we picked up in the mid-season draft, Alex Murkov, looks like he has a serious knee injury. I don't know what it is. It may be an ACL. We're yet to get the report for that, but it did not look good. He went down in the middle of Northport Oval. He was sort of writhing in pain and clutching at his knee, and he was down for a couple of minutes. So really, really disappointing for him. And we just hope it's not too serious. But unfortunately, it doesn't really look too good on his front. But that's a wrap for the AFL listed boys from our perspective. From a VFL listed point of view, look, Ben Crocker continues to ply away. He had 18 touches and 3 goals, and he's the Carlton reserves leading goal scorer and one of the VFL leading goal scorers this year as well, and he's been prolific at full forward. Look, I don't know if he's a player that we might pick up in the rookie draft at the end of this season, but if he continues to play the way he is, then there's no reason why they can't pick him up. I mean, he's a real pure forward, real pure full forward, and I'm not sure if that will cut it in the AFL. I mean, you need to be multi-dimensional with regards to where you play, I guess, these days. But his form down in the reserves has been quite good, and I was quite impressed by the games of Tom North and Wooler as well. Those 2 boys were quite impressive too. So all in all, it was a good, solid enough performance by the VFL boys. Port Melbourne are a well-established VFL team, but nevertheless, it's a win. And it was, again, a win against probably, I would say, inferior opposition, but it puts us now to 3-3 on the table. So we've even the ledger up a percentage of 105.8, and we're a game outside the top 8, but we do have a game in hand on a couple of teams that are above us as well. So it's a big competition with the NEFL being mixed into this as well. So onwards and upwards for the young fellas down at the Carlton VFL team. Make sure you like and subscribe on the Blue Abroad page as well. Follow me on Twitter. My handle is @PaulSeb05, and I'm always happy to answer questions whenever I get the time about the VFL boys and about the AFL boys in that regard. And you'll also catch me on the jumper punch with those 2 psychopaths, Rocco and Mars. So that's always good fun to record as well. So it's bye for now, but we'll be back with another VFL report hopefully next week, and hopefully we can have some crowds back at the games.